Great, hi, I'm Gwen Diagram. You can catch me at Gwen Diagram on Twitter. So I'm talking about how becoming T-shaped can cause a strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So a little bit about me first. So I'm a tester, DevOps kids, and occasional Scrum Master from Leeds. Currently working at Sky as an automation tester. And I'm 1/7 of the Leeds Testing Atelier organisers up in Leeds. So I organise a testing conference trying to teach testers about unit testing and how to be more technical and stuff like that. So they're not just the ones pushing the buttons at the end. And next one's in October. Usually you'll find me at one of the local meetups, Agile Yorkshire or Leeds DevOps. And some of my current obsessions are API automation, Pokemon Go, monitoring, and real ale. So let's start with some Scrum Master personas. So with people, there comes variance. And as Scrum Masters, it might not seem like it sometimes, but it might seem like we are superhuman, but we're not. We're actually just human. And therefore, we have a lot of variance in the way we practice our craft. So being a Scrum Master is a very wide, varying role. And to keep the balance between all the different personas that you need to carry, from speaking to higher management, to speaking to members of your team, or speaking to the product owner, means that you'll have different personalities come out. So here's a few that I've seen over the years. So the command and control. It's a very common type, actually. This is a Scrum Master that's forgotten everything about the idea of coaching and enabling the team. Instead, they tell the team how they are going to achieve their goals. And any objections from the team mean that the team get classified as difficult or badly behaved. Without coaching and resources, the team won't be able to believe in the journey that needs to be made. So the next one is the Hear No Evil Scrum Master. It's kind of a subset of the command and control. However, this Scrum Master gives the impression that they're listening to the team's opinions and objections, but in actual fact, they've totally got their mind made up. The Scrum Master will throw enormous meetings that last for hours, giving the impression to the team that they are letting the team choose their own destiny, but it's actually pure theatre, as in the end, the Scrum Master has given themselves ultimate power in the decision, and their opinion holds a higher ranking than any other team member. So the managing master is a really interesting role, in that the Scrum Master has somehow also gained the role of managing the team. So although the Scrum Master tries to enable the team, on some occasions the team's actually going to be far too scared to be able to speak up to the Scrum Master. And so you end up with a mirage of the team being enabled enough to make decisions, but really, they're still being puppeted. So the stand back, I know Scrum Master, can sometimes be quite a new Scrum Master that hasn't had the experience of being on a Scrum team yet. This Scrum Master's done their Scrum Master training, read all the books, and generally researched how to run a Scrum team, and therefore they know what to do in each eventuality, or so they think. Once any occurrences that veer off the beaten track of the books and exams happen, the Scrum Master loses their temper and demands that their known solutions be implemented, whether it actually fits or not. So the resourcing master has somehow ended up not doing the Scrum Master role at all. Might be a case that they didn't ask the right questions in their interview and they ended up with a project manager role, or they might not have the authority to be able to change the business's thinking. This Scrum Master spends most of their time sorting out resourcing, telling the business just when the project will be done, and their nose is buried in Gantt charts, bless them. They will be too busy with the administrative tasks to be able to actually help the team to be more effective in their roles. So the metrics master is a beautiful sight to behold, and they're actually really rare. I've only encountered one in my lifetime. So the metrics master collates all the metrics from Jira and presents them to the team so the team can actually identify the bottlenecks and issues that are occurring in each sprint by the way of monitoring their output. Using this, they can work together with the team to be able to determine how they can improve together as a team. These dudes are cool. So the metrics monster actually looks very similar to the metrics master, but it's the evil twin. Instead of reflecting to the team at the end how they can constantly improve, the metrics monster becomes obsessed with burn-down charts and how they must follow the exact diagonal line, and if the team hasn't achieved the goal of being under the line, berates the team are failing. So the enabler is a Scrum Master that cares for their team so very much. They understand the emotions that their team is feeling, and they can see their team members in very many layers. The Scrum Master protects their team from anything that's happening in the business, but sometimes they become so focused on what the team is feeling, they don't think of what the business actually needs. A delicate balance is required. So, the invisible man Scrum Master is most likely sharing their Scrum Master role with another role on the team. Perhaps development or test, which is fairly common. The Scrum Master will organise all the meetings, but they won't actually hold the meetings. Their interest isn't in the Scrum Master role at all. Perhaps they were the senior developer on the team, and so they're also given the Scrum Master role. It just isn't in their heart to be focused on the Scrum Master role at all. And the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which I was. This is a similar makeup to the invisible man. The Scrum Master has taken on the role from within the team, and they organise the meetings and protect the team and train the product owners, but there's actually something lacking, that being their other job role. They've focused so much on how they can make the team succeed that they've forgotten their entire previous job role and steamroll the protest from the job role within entirely. And that's the Scrum Master I was. So let me tell you how I became the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde of Scrum Mastery. So, as all good stories go, I joined a startup. This was quite early in one of the ideas of the startup, and it was going to be a social media company, which would be the next Facebook apparently, and all my colleagues were very excited about it. We received shares in it, and it was going to be absolutely huge in China. It consisted of a mobile application, which was going to be the main use, an API, and it was all built on Azure, so it was using table storage. It was going to be a great, scalable, robust product, and it was really exciting. So, when I started, I was hired as an automation tester and a monitoring specialist for the mobile app. I was going to be working on the API team, helping with the automation, and one of the testers was showing me how to do this. In the first week, however, another project came along, a project I'd already seen when looking what the company actually was. It was the website. No one wanted to work on the website, as it wasn't glamorous. It wasn't a long project, ever. We'd just need to do a tiny little bit of work on it, get it out there, and then the people that worked on it could go back to their old teams. They also didn't like the concept of context switching. So one of the other developers, the junior, Mr. T, you might have heard of last night, he was straight out of uni, and so he and I drew the short straws because we were the youngest, and we were pulled over to the temporary website team. We'd be moving back to the original team in a week or two as the work would finish and we'd forget about it. Bish, bash, bosh. Job's done. So I started work on the website with my developer. It was a very silly project. It was absolutely pointless. You wrote that what you were a fan of in a text box, and it showed up in a word cloud, nothing too tricky really. And so we delivered it within a few days, which was cool. I spoke to the other tester who was on the API project about what automation we'd require on it, and he said none, because it was a total throwaway project. So it was a fairly simple manual testing role. However, when I returned to the API project, out of the blue, I received a Skype call from another developer who was working in our Netherlands office. He showed me a bunch of words and pictures of pigeons rotating in a globe. I really like pigeons, so that was really cool. And I thought that was really thoughtful. But then it became quite obvious he wasn't doing this for fun, because that would be a bit weird. He asked if he could join the website team, which was a really strange way of building a team, especially one that didn't actually matter that much, so I was told. But I accepted. I was like, yeah, you seem like a dude, jump on. So front-end developer would be really useful for the website. It seemed sensible, but I was unaware there were some massive changes on the horizon. So quite shortly after I'd hung up the phone from the front-end developer, I received another Skype call. This time, well, I had no idea who he was, but he had some work to give me. Give the newfound team I apparently now had. So what the front-end developer had shown me with a rotating globe-like word cloud was now required by tomorrow, if you please. We did more work getting it ready from the proof of concept that the new developer had shown me, and it looked absolutely fucking terrible. So I told them, you're not having that. It's just like, we can't release that. You know, the tester in me had pride, and I didn't want the website going out with such a horrible interface that was unusable. So I argued with the man who gave me the work slightly, and I won the argument, and we decided instead we'd make the words vibrate when you moused over it, which was pointless as well, but whatever. So we released the changes in the time frame that they needed. And again, we thought that'd be the last of it. We could go back to our old project, but there were more changes coming. So every time we had completed a piece of work and could have a break and move back onto the API team as we were meant to do, more work came in. Not so much verbally anymore, but in massive PowerPoint decks with assets we had to use, and the deadlines kept getting shorter and shorter. Next day, next 2 days, it was painful. So we were working to a Kanban style at this point, as that little project, the website, couldn't possibly require more formal processes. But after work kept coming in, and my developers and I were working over weekends to meet made-up arbitrary deadlines, I snapped. I was tired. My developers were tired. We'd worked 11 fucking days straight, and we'd delivered absolutely everything that they wanted. And it still didn't matter because there was always more pointless stuff. So my developers are not working this weekend. I don't think I'll ever forget saying that. It was at 6:30 p.m. Everyone else except for one of the other testers had left the office for the day. And 6:30 UK time meant it was 7:30 in Amsterdam. And the chap that I didn't know who he was, but he gave me the work, was still there, and he was on the phone to me. My developers are not working this weekend. Sorry, he said. I repeated it, and that we're going to make changes. I had to come up with a plan. So I sat down, and I pulled out the user stories from the PowerPoint decks from the man who had the work had. I explained to the man who had the work what a product owner was, and we were going to start writing user stories together so he could learn how to do it. He wasn't the product owner as such. The work that he passed to us came from elsewhere, like from China or somewhere. It was really strange. And he didn't often have the authority to veto changes, but it was a pretty good start. He felt more empowered by being more involved with the development process, the discussions with the developers, and the developers had the chance to question and push back a change if it just wasn't implementable. So we had our first sprint planning session with the stories I'd written. What was originally requested in 2 days ended up being 2 weeks worth of work. This included testing, and although we had to argue for it, it seemed like we were going to be making progress. I'd introduced the concept of a product owner, sprint planning, user stories, planning poker, and it looked like it was actually all going to be okay. We'd gained control of the situation, and we were going to have some weekends back. So the first sprint, we delivered everything on time, with no overtime, and the team was happy, and our newfound product owner was happy. We received the new proposal of work 3/4 of the way into the sprint, planned it, and it was okay. This was all about being honest with the business and telling them when the work could actually be delivered, with a caveat that these were not estimates, and neither was sprint planning a forecast. When we said the work was going to be delivered by, the work had to be delivered by then. We never found out what would happen if it wasn't. We never missed a deadline. But the fear in the product owner, like his voice, if we were slipping, was enough to let us know that it would just be too unpleasant to think of. So the reason why we never miss the deadline is sometimes we release software that, well, shouldn't have been released. I remember the first time I backed myself into a corner as a tester. One of the changes to that stupid word cloud had really hideous performance issues. They wanted every single word that visitors to the website entered on the word cloud animated and dancing around. There were about 1,000 words, and it just couldn't deal with it. So once the word cloud got over 200 words, the loading of the website just slowed down incredibly. I knew this, and I warned people, but we had to get it out there. Otherwise, the PO, like, I have no idea what would have happened, but he was scared. So people's words that they had entered weren't loading within 10 seconds. So they weren't happy. But also, if you remember, I was the monitoring specialist at this company as well. This meant that I was the person that had set up the monitoring, and I was the one getting up at 2 a.m. to restart this bloody website constantly because it would fall over. So it just got worse as well. Occasionally, the product owner couldn't give us all the assets that were required for the website in good time. We released at 3 p.m. on a Friday, usually 2 weekly, but sometimes weekly, depending on what work we'd received. I made the cutoff for 12 p.m. on a Friday for any changes to assets, any assets that were getting added, etc. If they weren't there, they weren't there. They couldn't have it in the product. The developers could get the assets in, but again, testing this in several different browsers, etc., in a few hours at the end of the sprint, not going to happen. I had to test this afterwards, and although the tester inside didn't want to release software without knowing if it actually worked, unfortunately, due to these deadlines and making sure that the product owner wasn't sacrificed to the gods or whatever the hell was going to happen, we had to do it. So while this was going on, the code base was getting messier and messier. We didn't have unit tests because the code was meant to be thrown away. We didn't have automated tests for the same reason. And because of the pressure to deliver, instead of considering good development practices, it was just a mess. The work kept getting thrown at us via PowerPoint documents, and we couldn't get a chance to breathe. Eventually, after begging the product owner for a few sprints, we got to the chance to rebuild the website in a language we chose by a whole new piece of work coming in that was completely irrelevant to this stupid word cloud. This was actually, it was choosing what you liked better out of randomly generated pictures. It was so bizarre. So like, I like cheese better than potatoes, and then it would generate this thing at the end. It was all amazingly ridiculous. But there was one catch with this new piece of work. Of course, there was a hard deadline. By this point, my developers really, really needed the re-architecture because they couldn't develop in it anymore. And I had to choose. Would we deliver this with acknowledgement from the tester inside, or would we continue trying to save everyone's ass? Well, you can probably know the answer by now. So the strange thing about the whole startup in the end was my chaotic form of Scrum Mastery. You know, I'm not trained. I learned from a very good Scrum Master, but I had to ditch a lot of the ideas from then to save everyone's asses. So I didn't do all the normal things such as retrospectives at the end of every sprint, and focusing on ensuring that the team didn't have to work overtime, but letting the business know exactly what we were delivering by getting the estimates correct. Estimates correct, it's hilarious. But it ended up in my team, the shitty little website team, we ended up keeping our jobs, for better or for worse. My obsession with getting the product delivered so that the product owner was safe meant that when the API team and the mobile teams were fired, they moved development to China. The website team still existed until the company went bust. As you can guess from the weird things that we were building, the company wasn't going to be going places. And it sure wasn't going places with the absolute complete disregard for testing over delivering useless rubbish. So we've all seen the triangle of project management. I'm really sorry for bringing project management up at an Agile conference, where there's quality, time, and cost. And the answer is to choose two. The same can be said for wanting an employee to share themselves over Scrum Master and a different role. No matter what, they won't be able to achieve everything. I absolutely loved my role, and I tried to do what was best for absolutely everyone on the team, except for myself. Quality had to suffer, as in the quality of the tester role I was supplying. The same happens with the invisible man persona. The problem with shared job roles is one always has to suffer. I believe in the T-shaped person. I absolutely love being the jack of all trades and master of none. You usually find me hanging out at DevOps, Agile, and test conferences, talking to a DevOps conference about being a tester, speaking at testing conference about monitoring or logging, and speaking at an Agile conference about DevOps. But the end is that I believe that Scrum Master is a role of its own, and we should hire specialist Scrum Masters. I was at a testing conference earlier this year, and I tweeted about commitments instead of forecast. And I had a world of Scrum Masters attacking me for using the wrong language. It was the right language in 2011. I just haven't been able to keep up. If you want a professional, you need to give them time to be able to study that within their role. And a shared role cannot assist the individual with achieving that. That was really short, I'm sorry. Do you have any questions? Hi?
If you're in the same situation again, what would you do differently?
I would say that we need to get another tester on the team. I would have gotten another back-end developer as well. And so, yeah, that's probably it. And also, so Mr. T, as a tester, I couldn't teach him good development practices, such as unit testing and, and stuff like that. And he was straight out of uni. And I'm like, I've ruined this developer by not showing him, about testing. Like, he's not going to think about that. So I definitely would. So I had some really, really amazing people working at the startup, and I would have gotten them to mentor him more. But I still would have taken on the role of, the bastardized Scrum Master role that I did, because that's not pure Scrum Master. That was what was needed, but I would still do that because everyone did end up safe until the company went bust. Anything else? Hi?
Have you ever spoken to other people that have similar experiences, and do they agree with your conclusions?
So, I've seen other people doing the same thing. So usually people don't have to do shared roles that often. I haven't met too many. So a lot of testers become Scrum Masters, and they usually move from the testing position to a Scrum Master. But most people don't need to share the role. It's a sign that the company doesn't understand what a Scrum Master is, basically. So no, I haven't met too many others besides, yeah. Hi.
Actually, I think it's very common that the Scrum Master role is shared with other responsibilities as well.
Yeah.
It's actually, even the variances that you mentioned, to me, they also appear to be stages that you can go through as a Scrum Master. First, you're part of the team, and someone comes on, hey, let's do Scrum. Okay, you're the Scrum Master now. And
Yeah.
who cares if you're also the front ender?
Yeah.
Just make it work. And then you start figuring out, okay, this is taking more of my time, so I'm going to ask management for another front ender because I can't go.
Yeah.
Otherwise, so then you move into a more pure Scrum Master role, and well, of course you can go to the command and control if you also think you're an awesome architect or something, or do any of the other things. And of course, it's also possible to start moving up to a more managing type of role if that's your ambition. I mean, that's
Yeah.
where people can go, of course. So then, as a Scrum Master, yes, you're always in a place in between other roles, other people.
Yeah.
I think it's a luxury to be a Scrum Master that just has to be a Scrum Master right now.
Yeah.
I don't also have to make the tickets move on the board.
So where I am at the moment, the Scrum Masters share of they're Scrum Masters, pure Scrum Masters, besides the fact that they have to manage the teams, which is just hilarious. It can't work. And it says that, in the Scrum guides and stuff like that, don't do that. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that is moving through different stages, definitely. But yeah, so, and also as a Scrum Master, you might have a few of those. And I didn't really mention the really good parts of being a Scrum Master, but yeah. Hi.
We sort of expect developers to be cross-functional. So, we don't like having specialists. People should be able to do a bit of design, a bit of test,
Mm-hmm.
a bit of development, and by having that sort of holistic viewpoint on it, they can be more effective.
Yep.
Do you think that what you said holds out for developers as well?
No.
Why is that?
So I think because Scrum Master is more of a you need to deal with all the humans and trying to get them all together to speak to each other and stuff like that. As a developer, testing is everyone's issue, for example, and so switching between too many languages could be an issue. So if you're trying to do front end and back end and everything in between, that could be difficult. However, testing and development is, that should be, you should be able to do that. Yeah. Did that answer it right?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think being Scrum Master is more event-driven, perhaps. There's a lot of dealing with people,
Mm-hmm.
with things that can happen at a point in time, which perhaps impacts you being able to do anything.
I think also with Scrum Masters, you need to be able to understand people's personalities and see that, and that, that takes so much out of you. If you're if you're a nerd, oh yeah. So yeah. Hi.
I think being a specialist is quite an interesting concept. It sort of says you focus on one thing.
Mm-hmm.
That in itself is limiting.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what you touched on is the most important aspect is that the recognising what's wrong and working out how to fix it. I think that is more about being a Scrum Master,
Mm-hmm.
is that you can see what's going on from a higher level rather than being on the ground, and you can sort of work out and learn ways of reorganising things to make it happen better.
Yeah.
And it isn't always playing by the rules. I mean, the rules are there as ideas.
Yeah.
I think what rules are accepted as a given. You should look at the way that people have done things and say, well, okay, I don't know how to fix it, let's try that one.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
I think to be an efficient Scrum Master, you need to be able to have time to study and stuff like that. And as from the tweet that I sent out where I got attacked by shat on from above, and it's just I'm really sorry, I'm not using the right words, but I can't study this, and because I study DevOps and testing as well, I can't keep up on everything. And in the end, Scrum Master is the one that will be the least of my concerns.
But what does the wrong word matter?
Oh,
The
well,
word that matters is
you would be surprised. I couldn't give a shit about the wording, you know what I mean? But yeah, it turns into a disaster. Yeah. Hey?
What's the best ratio? I mean, how many teams or how many people do you think a Scrum Master can actually handle at one time?
That's also really interesting. So, I mean, if you want the best out of the business people, because a Scrum Master isn't just focusing on the team, and if they are, they're doing the wrong thing. They need to be able to train the product owner. So, product owners a lot of the time, they haven't done their product owner training and stuff like that, and they don't understand. And so much of my time was helping the man who gave me the work, understand the Scrum Master role and stuff, understand the product owner role, and saying you can't just give us these decks of PowerPoint, that's not how it works. You need to, so it'd be you guys need to come to our sprint planning so you can see all the work that goes on once you give us these slides and stuff like that, so we can sit there and work together. So I think it's best if you do Scrum Master for one team until the team and everyone else starts being able to run by themselves, and then go and find another company. Scrum Masters should be replaceable in the end, and yeah, that's it. If you do that across two roles, I don't know, will you ever become replaceable? Yeah, 2 teams, sorry. Anything else? Cool, thank you for coming along. Sorry it was short, but yeah, cheers.